Welcome to a joint hearing of the Senate and House Education Committees on Thursday, January 15th. Today we have with us the Secretary of Education and I'm not sure what your title is, of the Agency for Digital Services, but
yes.
We'll let you introduce yourself in a minute. Thank you. Today we're going to catch up on some work that the agency had done for the redistricting task force. Was mentioned in our previous joint hearing, and so there was a request to follow up on that, speaking specifically about some mapping work that had taken place. I think with that, we'll turn it over to the two of you. Thank you for essentially making a quick turnaround to come and join us soon after the request. Introduce yourselves and proceed.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I'm Zoe Saunders, Secretary of Education, joined by John Adams from the Agency of Digital Services. The Agency of Education and the Agency of Digital Services coordinated to support the redistricting task force to produce several conceptual maps, some of which were not formally presented to the task force. The chairs of the Senate Ed and House Ed have asked us to share some of those conceptual renderings as a starting point for your work moving forward. For the agenda today, we want to begin by orienting you to the mapping tools that were created for the purpose of suggesting new district boundaries. And then we'll walk through a review of Act 73 goals to establish the criteria for evaluating different district configurations. And then we'll share several conceptual maps that have been presented and walk through some of the organizing principles for that work. Our position is to share this with you and to be a resource, but we are not coming today with an endorsed map from the Agency of Education or the Agency of Digital Services. Our focus has been on the criteria, and we do agree with the criteria that you have passed within Act 73, but there's no endorsement of a specific map today other than to share some of the thinking that you can build upon. So with that, I will turn it over to my colleague at Agency of Digital Services, John, to walk us through the mapping tools.
Thank you. Hi, folks. I'm John Adams, Director of the Center for Geographic Information, part of the Agency of Digital Services, and I will share my screen here. And you should have these slides. There are very few of them. We just one here, as I'm going to walk through a demonstration of some applications that we built for the redistricting task force. So part of Act 73, we were tasked with helping assisting the task force with some of their mapping needs, and we created 3 applications that you see here on this screen. One of them, which we refer to as the district builder. So this is a tool that enables any user to go and create their own districts and see some of the related metrics as they build those districts. The other is we refer to the School Explorer. So this is one where we have lots of different map layers, and it came out of it was the evolution of a mapping application that was created for House Education last year. So some of you may be familiar with it, but this is a tool where if there are any other map requests, or you say, hey, can we layer on top, these districts, or can you show these demographics, it's easy for us to add another layer to this application. So we keep the builder application and then the explorer application separate. And then finally, the last one is a drive time mapper, which was came out of a specific request from the task force. So we created that, and I will walk through these 3, starting with the district builder here. So if you do go to the link on the slides, it'll take you to this homepage that has a link to these 3 applications. You launch the district builder here. You should see this screen. On the left side, you'll have an app guide and information, which I will not go through here since I'll be giving you a demonstration, but if anyone is interested in going through those, they can, along with some information about some of the data sources here. But when you open up the application, this is what's in front of you. You have the Vermont's 256 municipalities shown here, and on the right, you have these empty or blank districts. And we used municipalities, so towns, as the building blocks. So we have the resident ADM, so the student population assigned to these towns. So when you select them, it will dynamically add those along with other variables such as the grand list. I can show you that here. We can select District 1. You can rename it if you'd like, and begin selecting towns. And you can see this isn't a good example because it's covered up here, at least on our screen. So let me just select a different district, and you can see the number of students start to change there. If you hit this toggle, you'll see the schools in those towns that you've selected. You can actually toggle the schools on here, and you filter out by type if you're interested. And if you expand these, you'll get additional information such as the facilities condition index and breakdown by school. And I would say there's three ways you can approach building these districts if you are using this tool. The first is by aggregating towns. We've also made it so that you can build them from supervisory unions if you prefer. So let's say you select a district and then select the different supervisory unions. It will add all of those together, and you can, add or remove towns from that if you'd like. And then finally, there's a few pre-configured districts that we loaded up here, and you can start from those and then, add or remove towns if you're interested. Once you have a configuration that you'd like, or if you're, if it's a work in progress, you can export, and you can, if you select this copy shareable link, you'll get a very long URL, which you can share to anyone. And if they open it up, that gives the application instructions to open it up exactly how you had configured it. Or you can download a table with the assignments, so the towns assigned to the districts that you've created, or an image of that map. And then if you select generate report, you'll get the average daily membership of the districts that you've created, as well as the grand list per student, and a few other metrics here, the 10-year change, public schools by type, and then district profiles down here. You can use that shared URL, or if you had saved that table, you can import assignments here. I think that generally covers most of the basic functionality here of the district builder. And I can go on to the School Explorer, but maybe I'll stop here to see if anyone has any questions about this right now. Right. So here is the School Explorer. When you open this, these are the layers that are that you open to. You have the different school types and size by enrollment, and you can zoom in or select those. And if you click on a school here, the perils of the live demo. We'll get information on that school related to, enrollment, the facilities condition index, staffing details here, as well as information about the district and SU. If you go on the left, you can see here where it says map layers. Here's where we've loaded up a number of different layers that were requested. So you have anything from, high resolution population distribution here. You have let's see, statewide commuter flows. Everything from jobs or grand list details. Rich daily traffic, conserved lands. So these are different data layers that were requested that we've added to this. It includes our school districts. I think you get the idea. I won't go through all of these layers, but if there are ever any, or if this is a useful resource for you, and we have the data with the map layers, it's fairly simple for us to add more to this application. And then the final one we had created was the school drive time explorer. So we modeled the drive time from all of the schools. We used conditions for a typical Tuesday in January using bus telemetry. So some of these may seem like longer than they actually are. And they may not be, exact, but they should give you a pretty good idea. And we created different views of this. So you can look at it from the perspective of school, for example. So let's pick Berkshire here, and it'll zoom to Berkshire, and you can expand, set that drive time, and you'll see the drive time from the school, and then the results will break out by town, an estimated number of students and how far that school is for those students by town. And we did this by using E911 addresses, and we had a model that assigned a certain number of students, or a fraction of a student per home. So this isn't exact. This isn't based on actual resident where students actually live, but we assigned a number of students based on the number of students in that town, and we distributed it across those residential addresses to come up with these estimates around how far students would have to drive by town. The other way to look at this is from a town perspective. So you can go and select a town, and from there see how far different schools are for the population. So you can go select a school, and then you'll see in your town, for example, here in Barton, from the Lake Region Union High School number 24, approximately half the students should be around a 5 to 10 minute drive, a quarter of them at 10 to 15, and so on and so forth. So, and then finally, the compare view is just one that lets you select two different schools, and then compare. You can select the drive time and then see how far they are in comparison to each other. You can So these are the three primary applications we had built for the task force. The first two we had built before they actually began. We noticed they had a relatively short time frame, and we decided to build it to demonstrate to them what's possible, and then iterate with them and make additions to it as needed. Happy to answer any questions.
Not seeing any, I just would say, thank you. Not only was this a tool for previous work, it's going to be a tool for future work. But if in an era where we may have new configurations across the state, within those, there's going to need to be work done. And this is going to continue on as, I think, a really valuable resource moving forward. So I really appreciate the work on that.
Are there any questions? Lost my Zoom screen. So as we're transitioning, I'll ask our policy director, Torn Ballard, if you could hand out the packets, and I'll orient you to what is inside those packets while we're transitioning to a slide deck to give you more context on what we will present. And it looks like I closed this one. So next time.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm having trouble getting one hand.
Each folder.
Yes, one for each. Thank you. And all of these materials have been uploaded to the for the testimony for backup documentation. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to see the details of the map, so we did print them on a larger view for you to look at. See, open. Excellent. So I do want to start by commending Don and the Agency of Digital Service team for creating this tool, and also to mention that this is publicly available. So any Vermonter who would be interested in exploring different district configurations has the ability to do so using this tool. I think the design elements that they put in are really important, because as Vermonters are playing with this, and you and your role as legislators, you're able to identify if those district boundaries meet the Act 73 criteria. So everything has been developed according to that criteria that has been put into law for the new district boundaries. So for this presentation, we've walked through a mapping, a demo of the mapping resources. I'm going to start by briefly reviewing the goals of Act 73 and those priorities that have informed how these maps were organized. And then in addition to the maps that I will share today, you also have access to the CTE map that the redistricting task force reviewed. Additionally, our team provided some consultation around a county model that was explored. The models that I will share with you today are opportunities to build upon and start new conversations around potential maps. So the redistricting requirements, as you all know, the task force shall study and consider different configurations for school district consolidation and propose not more than 3 options for new school district boundaries. Those new proposed districts or supervisory unions, to the extent practical, should contain between 4,000 and 8,000 students for pre-K through 12th grade. And the proposed new school districts or supervisory unions as supervisory districts shall be, to the greatest extent possible, equitable in terms of grand list and per pupil count. So to be balanced in those numbers, along with other demographic factors. There was an intent to ensure that they're logistically feasible and to create the least amount of disruption to students as possible. These are the specific considerations that were outlined in Act 73, that the current school district and town boundaries and other historic and current community connections, including access to regional services for students, such as designated agencies, would be considered. We'll also consider geographic boundaries, including mountains and rivers, population distribution, location, capacity, and the facility condition index scores of current school buildings, transportation and employment patterns and practices, grand list values accounting for the homestead exemption and current education spending, student demographics, debt liabilities and assets of current school districts, opportunity to support local elementary schools, central middle schools, and regional high schools with the least disruption to students, access to career and technical education centers for all eligible students, the maximum cost efficiencies, the locations of schools and CP centers, and then any other factors that should be considered. So wanted to run through those because the tool identifies all of these as a layer. And so it's easy for you to navigate, to evaluate the degree to which a district boundary meets all of that criteria. The scenarios included in this presentation build off of the VSBA region, so the Vermont School Boards Association regions, regional high school districts, and a third example is offered that is a hybrid of the two. So as I noted at the beginning of the presentation, the AOE and AES are not coming to endorse a specific map, but really want to reaffirm our agreement with the criteria that was established in Act 73 that you all identified. And there are, as you will see through the different modeling, there are only so many ways to draw the lines and comport with the criteria of Act 73. The VSBA regions we are sharing with you because these regions were used last session as a default for a lot of the modeling that was reviewed as you were evaluating the bill and specific to the funding components of Act 73. The Vermont School Boards Association is an organization that does provide some level of collaboration across existing school boards. This is the map of the VSBA regions. You also, in your packet, have a map that is blown up so you can see more detail. The grid that is included in the map helps you to identify the types of schools that are included within those boundaries. And in addition, in your packet, you will see a version of this map, and you'll also see another version that layers on the regions, the topography, and the travel time, so that you have that as an additional layer. All of this is information you could access within the tool, but we printed it for convenience. As you look at the VSBA regions, you can note that some of these districts exceed the maximum threshold identified in Act 73 in terms of student enrollment. So you can see Central Vermont, Eastern Chittenden, Franklin, Grand Isle and Western Chittenden are over that 8,000 threshold, along with Windsor slightly. The regional high school districts were developed to ensure that there's a regional high school within each district. We can walk you through the criteria that was identified. This is an organizing principle to ensure that each district has a coordinated elementary, middle, and high school within the area, with the concept of also including in the future state regional high schools and CPE centers. The initial regional.
How you define regional high school?
Yes. So I'll let John expand on the criteria for the regional high school map about the 300 enrollment.
Right now. Yeah, so the regional high school districts was something we just developed as a concept, starting with high schools of a minimum ADM of 300 students. And then from there, we had a certain drive time. It may have been 18 minutes or so, where we created, if a high school was in close proximity to another, and they were both within that threshold, it created a high school cluster. We then assigned all the closest towns from a drive time perspective to those, either the high school or the cluster. And then based on a number of other parameters, let's say a town was in close proximity to multiple districts, we made sure that no school districts were broken up for supervisory unions. And then if that district didn't meet a minimum threshold, it may have been set at 3,800 or so, it would then get aggregated to the one with the closest high schools. Conceptual model with different dials that you could turn to get a map as a starting point.
And the first version of the regional high school district map did include a single Chittenden district. There has been a lot of conversation in the task force and also in the legislature that being a concern of being too large. So the version that we're sharing here actually breaks Chittenden into 3 different districts and to meet the requirements of Act 73 in terms of enrollment. You will note here that there continues to be 2 that are slightly over the maximum threshold. So with that in mind, we did some work in thinking about a hybrid scenario. So it's important to note that the VSBA and the regional high school district scenarios are similar. They are similar in scale and they overlap in many areas. They provide greater balance between districts in terms of need and property wealth compared to the current district or current SU-SD configurations. They do differ in how well other priorities and criteria are met. And we can expand upon that in our conversation. Both include districts that are over the 8,000 ADM. That prompted us to think about offering a hybrid model that combines the best of both maps. And this third hybrid scenario does start with the Vermont School Boards Association regional map. It keeps existing SU and SDs together and ensures K-12 districts with regional high schools, which is part of a shared vision that's been articulated within Act 73. To meet to not exceed the maximum ADM, this hybrid splits Chittenden into 3 districts, and that is based on the regional high school map that I just shared with you. And it splits central Vermont into 2 districts, and that is based also on some of the adaptations we made to the regional high school map. So this is a version of the hybrid map. You can see, as we have outlined in all of these, some demographics to the left, which outline the enrollment patterns. Central Vermont still slightly exceeds the maximum of Franklin Grand Isle as well, just to note. So with that, I will. Also, I should orient you to what you have in your packet. So in your packet, you have each of the 3 maps. They are stapled. So you have the version that you saw on the screen in the slide deck. And then the second page has additional layers of detail, which include, you can see the topography, you can see the major roads to give you a sense of drive time. And you'll note that there's other variables you can add to this view in the mapping tool if you want to dive deeper into any one of these scenarios. Additionally, because it can be hard to read the maps at that level, we have included Excel printouts for you. And these help to identify the specific schools and their current affiliation with SU and SDs, and then where those schools would be placed within the various models proposed here, including the VSBA region, the regional high school district, and the hybrid approach. There is, on the version that you have uploaded, you can drill down, somewhat challenging as you look through the maps, but there's additional detail on this version I'm going to share with you. That also includes by each school, you'll see the square footage, so it gives you an estimate, understanding of capacity. It includes school enrollment, and it also includes ADM as well. And facility condition is an index that we have evaluated and is included as an additional layer in the tool. So as you move forward with exploring different district configurations, there is a possibility to create default maps. So in coordinating with John this morning, we could create a default map for all 3 of these. Currently, VSBA is already there as a default map because so much modeling last session was leveraging that particular configuration. But we could also have it so you could click to see the hybrid model, you could click to see the regional high school model, and play around with the other layers to get a broader view of the overall district profile. Also to note, we're looking Vermont wide, right? So we're looking at the entire state, but as you're engaging in the tool, you can zoom in so you can get more specific and really understanding the clusters I'll note that as you're looking at the maps, sometimes our, elementary and middle schools are very close together. And so those dots are hovering over each other. When you're zooming into the tool, you're able to see more discreetly where they are. And you can also screenshot that so that you can actually have a zoomed in view of the specific districts, which gives you a better sense of all of the schools within the region. And part of this work too, in doing around the regional high schools, gives you a sense too of attendance patterns, but not that we would be determining that, but starts to have some input to guide those decision-making processes. So that's what you have today.
Thank you. Just a question about the regional high school model. Did you sort of how did you define regional high school? Obviously, some of these areas have what I would call numerous regional high schools. To get a little more clarity on that, that'd be great.
And so for all of these, I would say that we'll articulate what the criteria were that we used. However, if there's specific questions that you have or additional considerations that you think should be contemplated, we are here to be a partner and explore how that modeling could be done. So we'll start with today's conversation in explaining what criteria were defined to produce these initial maps. And I'll let John expand on that. But we do hope in this discussion that we can note additional questions you have, additional considerations or data points, so that we can help in informing your decision making.
I guess my question is really within the regional high school model, is that sort of like if you were to have an imaginary brand new regional high school, these would be how you break it up, or is it to say these are areas where there are regional high schools existing?
This is all based on existing schools.
So Addison County's got 3 regional high schools in it. Did one sort of how did that factor in? Many of the areas have multiple regional high schools in them. Or what is a regional high school?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start by saying, I should not be talking about education policy or any of these, what should or shouldn't be, or totally agnostic to that. And I'm just trying to empower anyone who has an idea to visualize that and analyze it. I think the number, the 300 was given to me to use as a starting point for a model, and that there was a reason behind why you would have a minimum of 300 students in a high school. And I can't speak to why that is or not.
But I just was looking for that. So you sort of define regional high school as 300 or more students in it. Great, thank you.
I think also an important point is it's based on existing infrastructure.
Yeah.
And we know that there's an interest in the future state to have comprehensive regional high schools. But we also need to ensure that we're providing that quality education now. So this can be a tool as we also think about future state and prioritization of school construction.
When developing the hybrid model, in the start of your presentation, you reminded us of the long list of considerations. Again, they were considerations. They weren't like everything had to neatly fit into a model. Were there considerations that were sort of weighted a little heavier than other considerations?
Yeah, so I'm going to pull up a little bit of you also have in your packet, I think it's printed. If it's not, we'll follow up, a matrix, which helps you to get an overview of the breakdown across these. So let me just make sure it's in the packet. And if it's not, I'll make sure to throw it up. I'm not sure that we have that in there. But what you'll start to see is where it's really very nuanced at this point. There's a lot of similarities across these maps. We certainly made adjustments to fit within the minimum and maximum enrollment. So I think that was a large driver in making the adjustments. You note that within some of the maps, the first 2 sets of maps, that there are more districts that exceed that 8,000 maximum and at a greater rate. So as we explored different ways to organize, that was a major consideration. In terms of creating least disruption, wanted to ensure that we kept districts and SUs together to the greatest extent possible, because that's really important as you're thinking about also shifting federal dollars and resource allocation, and looking at the property tax base in terms of equity. You'll see that the hybrid kind of gets you to more parity in terms of the grand list. That's important as we think about the revenue generation piece of this, and more consistency when you're thinking about the overall school portfolio, and that's indicative of the enrollment size being more similar across the hybrid model.
Caleb?
So kind of going back to the regional high schools again, I'm still trying to get my head around a little bit of how the maps were set up with them. So if we're talking about existing infrastructure, was capacity in the existing infrastructure taken into account when the maps were created?
So I would say capacity is an area we have not, as a state, tracked very methodically. In your backup documentation, we have included square footage, which gives us an approximation on capacity. I would note that building capacity does not always translate into capacity in terms of educational operation. So there's more work that would need to be explored around then that level of viability around actually how we organize classrooms in your lab space. So this work provides that approximation and can be fine-tuned.
Okay.
So there's other questions here. All right, well, there's a fair bit of information here for us to review. Again, just final thoughts on the map and the information in front of us before.
Yeah, I guess just to get a little clarity. So these are really just samples that you sort of put very different maps in front of us, to show us.
These, I think, these are viable maps for consideration. There's intentionality around evaluating these configurations against the criteria for Act 73, and each has an organizing principle that is worthy of exploration. So the VSBA map, the organizing principle, is to leverage existing school board collaboration that's been occurring across the state as we think about making these transitions. The regional high school map, that organizing principle is understanding the vision for the state of moving towards regional high schools. I think a lot of the questions that you're talking about is how do we define regional high schools? I think that needs to be part of an ongoing conversation as we think much further into our future state when there are opportunities to build or reconfigure. The other piece of the regional high school map is really ensuring that there is that continuum from elementary, middle, and high school, giving access to the full continuum of learning in the child's career. So those organizing principles, I think are relevant and important as you evaluate the criteria. And then the hybrid really takes the best of both worlds to identify how we could take those organizing principles, further refine them in a way that would meet the criteria of Act 73.
Matrix you were talking about.
Yes, thank you.
It's hidden in there.
I just wanted
Do you mind if I borrow that for a moment? Thank you. So this is the matrix that I was referring to and includes along the side here, it has the number of districts. It shows you the average, minimum, maximum, and also the ratio between the smallest and the largest. So as you look at the hybrid, you can see that that ratio is minimizing, right? So everything of the hybrid starts to get us to a more balanced equilibrium. You also include the number of schools. It's important for us to understand the overall portfolio and the level of similarity across the districts. Here again, you have the average, minimum, and maximum. And the federal poverty level as well is relatively similar with the new models. But I think what's important is comparing that to our existing structure. And that's where you start to see a lot of the variability. And property wealth is also included. So when you start really looking at different configurations according to Act 73, you're starting to see there's a lot of similarity in terms of these metrics, but they do vary greatly from our current state. And that's as we would expect, given that the direction to move towards larger districts is designed to be more equitable. And the criteria that you determined within Act 73 is helping us to achieve that and be methodical and evaluating the future state. So thank you. This is included in your packet.
Senator Heffernan, thank you.
Chair. So originally, I think you brought us 5, correct? Because scale, and that would be the optimum savings. Or I don't even want to say savings anymore. I think for our state, it's getting more efficient. So a more efficient running system, which in turn should save us money. So now we've gone from that up to, what was it, 15? 13? So I see we're going to lose some efficiency. These are just, again, just thoughts, but my thought now is that I'm going to say it to both sides, that I'd like to see either 1 or 2 districts, and then we figure it out from there, because once we have to start deciding to reduce and consolidate, it will make the path so much easier. And then it's almost a new way of thinking of, instead of school boards, we have advisory boards. There's so many other options we can do here to really make Vermont more efficient. We have districts out there that are larger than our schools put together, and they run on one superintendent. I think we really need to take a long look at that and come up with a new system that makes Vermont very efficient, because some of the things we were worried about, was budgets, leadership, criterion, practices. And right now, they're all over the place from what we learned from our last couple meetings. If there was only 1 or 2 districts, I think that would make the whole system, like even lunches, school lunches, you could go anywhere in Vermont, and on Wednesday, everybody was having the same meal. That creates efficiency because everybody's buying from the same source. So this is just, I'm just asking the board to think about that, both the Senate and House of Representatives, that we think like that as well, to make a more efficient Vermont school system.
Yeah, Representative Harple.
I have a couple of questions regarding that scenario that you're laying out. One is that if we had,
Who are you speaking to?
well,
Senator
this
Heffernan?
idea that was just laid down of 1 or 2 school districts.
I mean, that was, rather than getting into a debate about that,
Okay.
it's not a proposal on the table.
I have some huge concerns with that statement that was just put on the table.
You're welcome to respond. Yeah, go
All
ahead.
right.
No, I said you're welcome to respond.
Oh, okay. So one would be, and maybe this is a question for Secretary Saunders if she's considering that idea seriously.
That was coming from me and me alone.
Okay,
Okay.
I would like to address this though.
Yeah, that's fine.
That is an extreme of what we're talking about. And one would be, how would we ensure that if we had advisory boards and some school boards, that the work that they did is being honored by actually doing what they suggest, and how would that play out over a state that might have very different values in urban areas and rural areas?
I'm going to just pause for a moment. We'll call that a rhetorical question for us to think about. Of
Okay.
course, we're looking for a response. But also, we have Act 73 in front of us, which talks about districts between 4 and 8,000 at the moment. So
Okay.
so
it
There's
can be
one more
amended.
question to that though, and then
Yeah.
like the lunches were mentioned, and yesterday, we heard the testimony from the schools, like how are we going to continue to honor like local agriculture and local food systems, but yet try and feed 1 or 2 districts that all get tacos on Mondays and burgers on Tuesdays. I just want to put that out there as things we need to think about.
it's a little more complicated than what we get. Randy? Oh, I'm sorry, on this side. Hey, go ahead.
Wait. Did you have your hand up?
Senator Weeks, another question?
No, I'm not,
Great.
Aaron first.
Did I assume this is not possible in the mapping tools right now, but when we start to look at the lists of all the things that have to happen for consolidation of districts of any size, from 2 going into 1 to 28 going into 1, that we're starting to compile some lists. I'm trying to remember which one we looked at in committee just a couple of days ago, of kind of all the discrete tasks, obviously each with a dollar figure attached that would have to happen. Do these count, or do you have any like back of the envelope numbers of sort of what the consolidation cost would be per each of these? Like how many buildings have to be transferred? How many collective bargaining unit agreements have to be merged? How many? I imagine just looking at it, some of them, while they're a larger district, might actually have fewer merger steps, and some might have many, 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 many districts that are now merging into one. And so there's a whole lot more logistical work, again, all of it with a price tag. And so I just wonder if we have any sense of that sort of price tag per consolidated unit. And then I guess a question for you, or even for the chair, as a reminder of what money was already allocated for that consolidation work in Act 73 and how it's distributed. Is it statewide? Is it per district? No.
So the one I would ask, if there are specific data points that you're interested in evaluating within the map, we welcome those requests so that you can actually visualize that within the tool. So I would encourage all of you to review the different layers that are included. And if you feel that there's another data set that would be helpful to inform your decision making, we would like to be able to upload that if it's available. So that would be quite helpful to us. Some of what you're describing is moving into the implementation planning. We have brought forward suggestions as you're thinking through the mechanism around collective bargaining. Also, in the original proposal that was put forward last year, we did include language around how to manage debt service. I know also that the money committees, House Ways and Means and Senate Finance are exploring that as well. So I think all of that has been outlined in terms of the considerations to move forward, and we could have a separate meeting to walk through what that looks like. One piece I would name that we've heard really consistently is there's a need to understand the new districts in order to do that work precisely. So a lot of the work we've had an engagement with our business managers and superintendents and principals, there's work now that they can begin getting ahead of if there's clarity on the direction of where we're going. And we did note that in many of our reports that getting clarity quickly on the new district boundaries would be helpful to get to that next level that you're requesting around the implementation planning.
Senator Weeks.
Thank you, Chair Collin. So I have a concept question. In Act 73, we tasked ourselves to take a look at maps, which were the grand list was an element. Can you comment on how relevant the grand list becomes in a newly formed district when we use the foundation formula? Just been struggling with that concept for a while.
I think it would be helpful to have the tax department to weigh in more specifically, but grand list is important as you're thinking about equity in terms of taxpayer capacity, and also the ability, should they be interested in doing supplemental spend. Those are some of the considerations that need to be accounted for from an equity lens, and also adhering to the Brigham decision.
Thank you.
Just wanted to follow up on it. Fair to say, I'm going to say something, and then you tell me whether it's correct or not, but we don't, at this point, this is almost the only starting point we have for looking at maps. And would it be fair to say that although you are very open to tweaks or changes, that the hybrid map is your best shot at a map?
I think of the models that we've shared today, the hybrid most closely aligns with the criteria and expectations set forth in Act 73. And we're very open to working with you to explore different tweaks to that that you'd be interested in looking at. But there are, I think, as we've said, to meet that criteria of Act 73, there are only so many ways to draw the lines. And I think, going through this exercise to get to the hybrid helped us understand the similarities as you start using this mapping tool. And there's some decision points around the best way to create the ultimate alignment and the new configurations. I'd say it's a strong starting.
Representative Taylor.
So not a question, so I'm breaking protocol, but I just want
Just
to.
ended up follow it with right.
Exactly. I just want to say that I am really impressed by these tools that were put in place and the thought that was put behind all the different layers. And I appreciate the ability to even be more flexible as we go along and discover even more things that we might want to take a look at. I think this is huge for us on our path forward. So I appreciate them greatly.
And we're here to support you in your process. So welcome, if you've had a time to absorb both the tool and also the sample maps, really interested to hear your thoughts and considerations. So we can support you in modeling refinements to that that you think will best serve the state.
Great.
I apologize, this question is going to be a little bit of a detour, but we know our school leaders are obviously facing a lot of uncertainty at the state level here as we all have these conversations and try to work this out. I happen to represent the district that is now in the crosshairs of really difficult federal shifts and policy changes. And the reality is that we are just sort of responding to the fire hose as quickly as it comes out of Washington. And so in talking with my district and trying to support, making sure that we are supporting and welcoming of all students, I wonder if you can let us know whether when the Senate Help Committee reached out in November to 18 states, I can surmise why I think those 18, and asked for really specific and detailed information about our practices and policies related to Title IX, whether you responded on behalf of the state of Vermont to those directed questions.
We provided a response to the Help Committee.
Is that public?
Yes.
Anything else? Then appreciate you both coming in, making the time for us, and we stand adjourned. Our committee, let's sort of wander for 15 minutes.